Thank you for having me today. My name is Ann Sheedy, and I am the Chief Operating Officer of the Upstate Programs. I've been with the agency for about 16 years in total. So I came in 1991 and I stayed until about 2002 and came back again in 2016. So I started my professional career here and I will end my professional career at Cayuga Centers. I have such fond memories and feelings about HOMEBUILDERS. For Cayuga Centers, it was the first community-based program that Cayuga Centers ever did. And so we primarily were residential at that point, back in the 90s. At that time, it was a paradigm shift in the field to identify family strengths and to believe that all families have strengths, to believe that children, the best place for children is with their families. So it's an incredible model, and all our resiliency programs, all our community-based programs are based on really the foundations that we learned in HOMEBUILDERS. We started in 1991, and it was a first for Cayuga Centers in terms of our community-based services, and it was also a first for the Cayuga County, the Department of Social Services. At that point, we're talking 30 years ago, at that point, it was not known to focus on family strengths. It was not the standard belief that children did the best when they grew up with their families. What was happening at that point were that children were being removed from their homes in very large numbers. So a trend had started at that point to really say, the state does not make a good parent. Children need to be with their families, and we need to put services in to prevent them from coming into care. The foundation of the program was really built on these values and beliefs that families are doing the best they can at any point in time, that every family, every child, every parent has strengths, and that it's our job to find those strengths and build on those strengths. This was very different than how counties at that time looked at families. So I remember meetings when I would go in and I would be very focused on the family's strengths, that they had pictures of their children, if their school pictures of their children on the wall, or pictures that their children had drawn, with a magnet on the refrigerator, or a trophy that a child had gotten for something that they had accomplished. That the county's focus, and I'm not blaming the county, this was a very common focus, was very much on the parents are bad. They are harming their children. They are bad. We need to save the children. So it took a long time for us to really relationship build with the county and have them understand that this way of intervening with families worked, and that you would start seeing improvement, because they were also very protective and they didn't want anything to happen to the children that were in there, that they were responsible for their safety. And so it was very much born out of fear and out of protection for the children. And so we started very slowly through a lot of meetings with the county, a lot of bringing bagels and donuts, a lot of sitting in on casework meetings with staff, and just very slowly building a trust with them that the way that we were developing work with families was really working, and it was showing, it was sparking, it was sparking hope with families, and they started really taking on being able to protect their children and being able to really change the way some of the behaviors that were putting children at very high risk, they were changing those. So the model very slowly took hold, but it was a long process. The program probably took us about 2 years maybe to really get a strong hold in the community. We went into families where there was a lot of violence in families. Some examples would be, I'd have referrals where families would fight with knives. And so we would go in and say, well, we know we're not going to be meeting in the kitchen, So we did a lot of pre-planning with families before we'd go out into the field, and we'd talk about weapons in the home or animals in the home. It was a very serious model because we went into the families that were referred to this program were families that had tried every program that was available. And if we didn't work with them, their children would be removed. And so families really understood that their children would be removed. So they had a lot of motivation to try something new. Family preservation as a model is also sometimes referred to as intensive family preservation. And the model was created to be the most intensive intervention for families before their children are removed into the foster care system. It is a very special program because there are there's a whole body of programs called preventive programs, and quite often they will go and visit a family maybe once a week. Maybe the family has to come to them once a week. Maybe there's a parent trainer that will go out to the home once a week. But family preservation is very, very unique in that it is very, very small caseload. So there's 2 families to 1 therapist. That means that you're going to spend at least 20 hours of direct face-to-face work with families in their homes. It's a model that we did a combination of concrete and clinical services. And so what I mean by concrete, I've walked into families' homes, families that lived maybe very, very rurally. And I remember walking into a home where their hot water heater was falling out of, the floor had all rotted and their hot water heater was falling into like the ground below. Or I walked into another family where the parent was sitting at a table crying and the whole front window was broken and shattered on the floor. So concrete work is what I mean by that, is that a family can't work on learning new skills or really addressing some of the emotional issues that they need to address in order to parent. They can't do that if their window is broken and shattered on the floor, or if the way they're getting their hot water, the whole hot water tank is falling into the ground below, and they have little children that are crawling in the house. So concrete skills or concrete services are really attending to those first. So the first thing I remember with the window broken, I remember going in and sitting down with this mother and just being able to say, "You must be so worried. Your window is broken. How can I help you? What can we do?" And sometimes the parent may be so upset and there are so many things happening that they can't even figure out what that first step should be. So I very gently stood up and said, "Do you have a bag anywhere? I think I might have bags in my car. Do you want me to go get a bag?" So I got a bag and just started on the floor picking up glass, and she slowly was able to then get up and get on the floor with me and start picking up the glass. And so my whole time, the 3 hours with that family that day, was cleaning up glass, putting up cardboard, taping up the window, going and ordering glass, and just making sure that window, by the end of the day, the family was going to be safe that night. So often, some of the work that we would do was come back to the agency and then think all together, what can we do? And sometimes that would mean that the team would get plywood, get a hammer and nails, would do whatever we would need to make whatever was happening, the floor safe for the family. Or maybe we would talk to our maintenance director at that point and say, "Can you help us? Can you spare anyone? Can we fix this for a family?" So that's the concrete needs. The clinical part is very important as well, because you're working with families that really have long histories of parents really not being nurtured, parents not understanding how to parent their children, not understanding the developmental levels that their children are at. They've also had experienced their own trauma, so there was no way that they had ever resolved some of the experience that they had. Maybe they had been in foster care, maybe they had experienced their own abuse and neglect, so there was never a way for them to have dealt with that. So part of this in the clinical work was really understanding what happened with this family, what happened with these parents, how can we support them, how can we give them the tools to start to resolve some of their own issues that got in the way of their being able to parent their children safely. So in 2018, the federal government passed Family First legislation. And in that legislation, what they decided was that they wanted to take more children out of residential care and make sure that, and put that money into more preventive services. So in doing that, the legislation also said that they wanted counties to use these well-supported programs. So HOMEBUILDERS was identified as one of those well-supported programs. So because of Family First, I went back to HOMEBUILDERS to really look up what is happening with the model. Since probably the mid-2000s, HOMEBUILDERS started along the path, like many other evidence-based programs, to follow that path to get their certification or their the stamp of approval to be an evidence-based model. So they are. And so about a year ago, we started to reconnect with the HOMEBUILDERS model, and we are redoing our training, and we are involved in ongoing consultation. So in Cayuga County, we are piloting HOMEBUILDERS model as a certified HOMEBUILDERS provider. So that's what we're doing now. We're in the process of that. So we're still providing the full family preservation program, which is what we call it, but now we are a certified HOMEBUILDERS provider. And the training is very, very similar. I think their technology is different, so the database, there's a lot more that we have to do in terms of collecting data for them. So it's a model that I very, very, very strongly believe in. It's influenced us not only in Cayuga County, it's influenced the agency in terms of really identifying family strengths, believing in families. I think our values and our beliefs also came from our work with HOMEBUILDERS.